The Google Pixel Slate is a step closer in the right direction for what I was hoping for with the Pixel hardware, but it seems like overall there's still like a curse or something. There's something tainted. Whenever you put Pixel in the name, like Google Home Mini, Google Home Hub, pretty decent products, nothing really to complain about. Chromecast is good, but once you put Pixel in the name, all of a sudden it has to be extra expensive and pretty crappy. It's like they look at Apple's MacBooks and think, oh, see, those have low-end hardware, so it's okay to release expensive low-end hardware because you're a big company and you've got a fancy logo. But Apple does something called software exclusivity and optimization, which Google doesn't seem to know what that is. And that's why today I'm going to be talking about why I'm not that excited and a little bit confused at the existence of the Pixel Slate. So as some of you may have known, I bought the maxed out most expensive version of the Pixelbook recently, just a couple months ago. I had a pretty terrible experience. It ended up being worse than I thought, between that laptop not being able to do a bunch of things, the design being very confusing and bizarre during most instances, and overall, just the software hardware experience was a mess. It was completely a waste of time, a waste of a product, and I couldn't figure out what exactly the Pixelbook was supposed to be good for. Now with the Pixel Slate, luckily, we're getting a lower price. So I'm already happy to see that Google's at least acknowledging that in the Chromebook/Android tablet market, you can't start it at $1,000 even if your name is Google Pixel. That doesn't suddenly make it okay to just say, there, we made it out of expensive components, therefore it's okay for us to charge a lot for it. So I saw the $600 starting price and I went, okay, that's a bit more reasonable. The Pixelbook, to this day, even after this last keynote, still starts at $1,000, which I really think they could have at least updated that, maybe lowered the price a little bit because it's a year old now, maybe update the specs or something like that. Not that that would really help, just, I don't know, do something with the Pixelbook because as it stands, it's kind of crappy. They didn't do anything with it, but the Slate came out. It's running a modified version of Chrome OS, and of course, the difference between the Slate and the Pixelbook is the Slate is not shipping with a keyboard and a trackpad. So you could say it's more of a Surface Pro competitor or an iPad Pro competitor than it is a MacBook to Chromebook competitor. It's trying to be kind of in its own realm, but Google definitely is hoping you're going to be buying that extra keyboard and trackpad because that's an extra $200. While it is nice that they're backlit, the keyboard seems on paper to look fairly premium, I think it's quite a stretch to say that in order to fully take advantage of the Chrome OS experience, you have to spend another $200 from our original starting price. And I started looking into the tech specs of the Pixel Slate and the story got a lot worse than I thought. So of course, they couldn't just remove the keyboard and trackpad and say that's why this device can be $400 cheaper than a Pixelbook. No, they had to compromise in a few other ways as well. See, while they advertised that the Pixel Slate ships with the latest 8th generation Intel CPUs, they kind of failed to bring up that the starting price version of the Pixel Slate at $600 does not ship with an 8th generation. It ships with an Intel Celeron or Celery. I'll just call it Intel Celery because I don't know how to pronounce it and I frankly don't care. Before you go into the comments and tell me how to pronounce it, I don't care. Intel Celery is not a very updated CPU. There have been desktop updates to Intel Celery this year, but nothing to the laptop/tablet market. This is the type of CPUs you find in like $200 Chromebooks. This is a notch lower than the Intel Core M3, which is in the base model of a 12-inch MacBook, which I know a lot of people love comparing the Slate to the 12-inch MacBook because that has low-end hardware too. That's very expensive, but we're not trying to compare that here because for one, that has macOS, which you cannot get anywhere else, unlike Chrome OS, which you can get countless other places. And two, macOS has something called hardware optimization. The important thing about that means that there are pro apps, professional grade editing software apps that are optimized by Apple, all different types of programs that can take best advantage of the hardware given to the 12-inch MacBook. That notebook was never meant to be a powerhouse. That was meant to be small and portable and as light as possible. And through Apple's optimization and software experience, I think that's able to justify the higher price point because you can't get that elsewhere. With the Pixel Slate, you can't really say the same thing because they don't really have a pro app market or a track record of taking advantage of low-end hardware. We've tested the 12-inch MacBook and we're able to edit 4K video in Final Cut just fine, which was a miracle given we had the base model. But giving Google the complete benefit of the doubt, we tried using a Pixelbook and we got the maxed out version. We're talking quad-core i7, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and it could barely run Minecraft, if you remember my rant on the Pixelbook. So now you're telling me you're shipping the Chrome OS Pixel version with the Android tablet at a starting price of $600 with 4 gigs of RAM and an Intel Celery, which is not a new CPU. If you spend an extra $200 and go into the $800 market for the tablet, then you start to get 8th generation CPUs, which at the end of the day might actually not matter given we've had very, very high performance chips in the Pixelbook with a lot of RAM, and it didn't really make much of a difference. Apps were still laggy, games still did not run very well. So the question becomes, do you need an M3 CPU or a i5 core in order to run like Chrome and watch YouTube videos? Before you start commenting, oh, I'm sure the Intel Celeron is fine, I'm sure you can get by with normal tasks just fine, whether it be watching YouTube videos, watching Netflix, writing Chrome documents, basic things like that, it should be fine. Well, don't forget MKBHD's video with his first on experience with the Pixel Slate, it already was lagging for him. So, I'm not trying to say that's concrete. He did have an early version of the product that may have not been ready yet, but the only reason I'm skeptical of this is because of my track record. I had a laggy, crappy experience with the $1,700 Pixelbook. Now I'm seeing even worse hardware, way slower CPUs, way less RAM, way less hardware for that operating system that's clearly not optimized for itself on an even cheaper device. I can understand why Marquez may have had some laggy experiences because that CPU is not very fast and it's kind of old. And like I said, before you start comparing it to the 12-inch MacBook again, the 12-inch MacBook did not just get a refresh. They did not just announce that. The Pixel Slate has a wait list. Like, they're not ready to start taking pre-orders. The Pixel Slate is coming out later this year. So in November, December, we're launching an Intel Celeron chip with 4 gigabytes of RAM for $600 running Chrome OS. So hopefully you can see my point that I'm trying to make here. If you want a laptop that just runs Chrome OS fine and okay, you can find that on Amazon for probably under $400. It'll have decent speakers, it'll have a fine display, but the selling point of the Pixel Slate is this 3000 by 2000 resolution screen, which is apparently very high resolution for a tablet, 291 pixels per inch, which is fine on a tablet, but if it's on a phone, that's too low, whatever. But all I'm telling you I'm concerned about is that slowest CPU from last year, not a new one, that's powering that high resolution of a display. I'm concerned that when Google did the keynote and they're like, this can play content filmed by directors in 8K, could they have been referencing the $1,600 Pixel Slate that has a CPU that can handle that type of playback? And yes, you heard me correctly, you can configure the Pixel Slate up to $1,600. So you can get an i7 core, 16 gigs of RAM, and 256 gigs of storage, which I guess Google's more about the cloud and everything storage in the cloud, but still $1,600 for a device with a quarter of a terabyte? I hate to bring this up, but iPad Pros are just a better deal. iPads overall are just a better deal, especially if you're talking about basic tasks. You need to do document writing, you need to access some cloud services, you need to check email, you want to watch YouTube and some Netflix. For one, iPads I think are already better for drawing. I know they advertise this with the Pixel Pen, but the iPads for over a year now, since 2017, have had the ProMotion 120 Hz display, which I think is a bargain given the iPad Pro start at $650 and also come in 2 sizes. Some people may think a 13-inch tablet is a little overbearing. Luckily, iPads come in 2 different size variants. So if you don't want the 13-inch version, you have the 10.5-inch, which is much more reasonable, way more portable, unlike the Pixel Slate, which only has 1 size option, and it looks like only 1 color option for now. Not that it really matters, but I thought I'd bring this up. The cameras on the iPad are also better. They can do 4K video, they can do 1080 at 60. The Pixel Slate cannot do that. And once again, the iPads are about to be refreshed. So tomorrow's video is probably going to be about the fact that we're getting some more leaks and some more reports about the iPad Pro refresh, hopefully in the next few weeks. But still, the fact that the Pixel Slate is yet to come out and it's currently a wait list, and I really don't think those extra pixels that you can get with the Slate are going to be worth it because most iPad Pro buyers don't really notice that kind of thing. At an average distance, the pixel per inch of an iPad is great. It's True Tone, it's 120 Hz, that's what people notice. Stretching the resolution to 3000 by 2000, I think if anything, is going to be pixels that aren't really seen, and it's also going to push that CPU to work harder than it has to, especially if it's an old, dated CPU, really hoping it's going to be able to run apps smoothly and not really give you that laggy experience that Marquez got. The one thing I like about the Pixel Slate is that it has 2 USB-C ports, so you can charge it and do one other thing, which I realize now, like, what are you going to do with a Pixel Slate? Like, plug in a hard drive so you can edit something? I don't know. So you can load games on it? No, it's terrible at running games. Yeah, I actually don't know why they have a second second USB-C port. Maybe if you want to plug it into like a monitor or something, but then again, I don't think that CPU is going to be great at running 2 monitors at the same time, especially with its Intel integrated graphics. Yeah, that's going to run well. I'm concerned. I feel like they put too much of a display, too much hardware for too crappy of an internal tech spec sheet that you could end up paying $600 for this tablet and end up getting a pretty laggy, crappy experience. Whereas if you want something just for watching YouTube and Netflix and doing some document writing, you could even get like the $300 iPad. That's way more portable, way smaller, and maybe the speakers aren't as good. Maybe that's your selling point. The Pixel Slate has dual front-firing speakers. That's great. But, I mean, it's $300 cheaper. That's nearly half the price. You have an extra $300 now to spend on a Bose mobile speaker, like a SoundLink. Those things will sound infinitely better than what you can get with the Slate. And once again, to no surprise, I feel like the Pixel Slate is Google saying, you should pay top dollar for this because it's made of metal and it's got a Google logo on it. Therefore, we're Apple. There, we made a Pro tablet. And that's all they really thought about. They didn't think about the fact that Chrome OS does not have a ton of Pro apps. Android is all optimized for mobile, not tablets. And this is all very fresh in my mind because I just had the so-called most premium, highest spec Pixelbook that Google offers, and it could barely run Minecraft, barely run PUBG, even though they advertise, buy the Pixelbook because you can play PUBG. Overall, a crappy design, and seeing them skimp out on specs and be okay with having lower-end hardware on the inside to push even higher display resolutions, I'm worried about. So I don't think the Pixel Slate is a good buy. Obviously, it's hard to tell because none of us have it yet, but what do you think of the Pixel Slate? I'm curious. Let me know if you think this is going to be a flop or if you think this is a good deal or you're excited down in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.